Okay, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the June Collective Transmission. I'm going to spotlight myself. Okay, let's dive in. So, whoo all right. As we, I'm sure, are all well aware, we are in a great awakening of this timeline, of this planet, right? Of this century. This is a big one. And we've known that, we've felt that. Now, this started back in 2019, right? That was like when we really started getting ready. And from that time in particular till now has been a period of preparation, right? A practicing, a questioning, a sorting, and certainly a strengthening, really confronting what we came here to be and do in this timeline, and really having to kind of work through a lot of our fear around it. Now, we have entered the acceleration of this awakening time. So, a lot of people have been talking about 2024 being a pretty massive year in terms of what's going to start happening and taking place on the world stage. And we've already seen that with a lot of things that have gone down this year and that are continuing to happen. So, the first thing that came through, and it's really important that I actually share the beings that brought this, and those are the Nyamping. And the Nyamping are what we call the star ancestors. They are the star beings, the very, very, very first ancestors that originated all of us. So they're very, they're star beings because they're so ancient and old that it's like they are of the materials of the stars themselves. Now, these beings in particular, these energies, tend to speak to the soul template, right? The programming that you incarnated with that is really it's your program, right? It's the computer that you came here to live. And so oftentimes when we stray from that or when we're confused as to what that is, right? There's like a lot of distortion in the field. The Nyamping come in to help us align and come back to that authentic template so we can fulfill the contracts that we came here to fulfill. So we'll get to that in a second. Now, one of the main things that they said was that timelines are expanding right now. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of the time people will talk about like timelines collapsing. And what they said about that was that we are increasing the window of genetic memory that is available to us right now. And this, I think, is fucking dope. This is really fascinating. So let's talk about lineage for a second, because I think there's sometimes people don't quite have the whole picture of what lineage is and does. Now, bloodline, your ancestral lineage is an energetic cord and an energetic circuit that connects you to everyone who came before you. So it connects you to their memories, their trauma, their gifts, their weaknesses, right? All of it is in the soup, and all of it is in you to some extent. So there's a lot that we can work with there. Now, we often talk about like unlocking ancestral gifts, which is super fun. We love to do that. But we also have to deal with the ancestral traumas, right? The inherited pains, the messes that people didn't get around to cleaning up in their lifetime, right? So it's all part and parcel with the package. Now, I want you to think about what your people were known for. Do you know what your family tree holds in terms of gifts, in terms of strengths? I'll give you an example. So my mom does a lot of ancestral research, and I know that we have a lot of doctors, we have a lot of inventors and writers and technologists, people who literally created machines. So, the whole point is not that of course we have doctors in the lineage, so I have to be a doctor, but it's really about examining the skills that were developed, the strengths that were developed over the period of time that these people were alive. Because that memory, right, is feeding into this energetic cord that you are connected to. So ironically, I'm a writer. I've also been a technologist. I am a healer who thinks outside the box, right? So these genes have replicated themselves in me, but they've taken on new forms, new expressions, which is exactly what genes do. They're always bringing forward new iterations of themselves while still retaining an essence that has been around for a while. So when you think about your ancestral lineage, all of this is available to you. Now, I want to talk about that like genetic memory and the expansion of it. So when we think about and talk about expanding our consciousness, what it actually means is that we are extending our consciousness, because consciousness does not purely live in one brain. Okay, research has demonstrated that consciousness is non-local. It is not living in the brain. The brain is not what generates consciousness. And that is a radical thought. So I bring that up because when we start to extend our consciousness, it's a different idea than just thinking about expansion, right? Sometimes expansion feels a little linear. Sometimes expansion feels a little selfish, egoic, right? Like, oh, it's my brain that's getting bigger, rather than actually, I'm extending the edges of how I think, of what I have access to. And that to me, like every time they talk about this a lot, this extension of consciousness. And I think it's a really, again, radical way of thinking about consciousness in general, but also about how we fit into the picture of developing our consciousness. Because when we develop and expand and extend our consciousness, it doesn't just benefit us, right? It actually starts to shift everything that we are in connection with, including our ancestors. So when we extend our consciousness, we are actually connecting to more pathways of information. We have infinitely more access points that we can receive information from and feedback into, both ancestral as well as other avenues, right? Like nature. Nature is a consciousness. So that's really what they mean by extending this genetic memory. For whatever reason, there's been this like removal of kind of like a dam, right? So it's like there's this floodgate that is opened up in our collective memory. And now we are all getting access to more of it. So there's an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to activate and really utilize this available genetic memory to do more of what you came here to do. And we're going to talk more about that too. But I want to kind of just plant the image of a spider living in the center of its web. If you think about a spider, and if you've ever watched a spider, right? I live in the woods, so there's a lot of spiders. And a lot of the times there's these little spiders and there's just like one line of web across the road. It's not even a full web. It's just one string, one filament. And I think oftentimes when we think about, again, like growing or expanding our consciousness, we think about that. We get more, we go farther. But instead, if you think of consciousness itself as you being the spider that is in the center of this like infinite web, then you are starting to grok the possibilities of what it means to truly expand your consciousness. Each one of those strings in that web is an information superhighway. And when we stop focusing on like the very linear, right, ways of thinking, we move into that like superhighway dimension of information. So, I think many of us kind of make the mistake of thinking, oh, information can only come from like a book or the internet or an expert, rather than information can come from a tree. Information can come from your ancestors. And so starting to factor those avenues of information into your expansion is going to yield very powerful fruit for you. Now, this moment in our world, this moment in time, was cosmically ordained by everything. And I had to ask the question because I was like, well, Why? Like what shifted, right? What opened this floodgate? What was the triggering event? Now, in order to answer that, I need to talk about how the universe works. The universe organizes itself based on equilibrium, okay? Coherence and chaos are both essential in this equation. You need both. You need both to sustain and support a larger balance over time, over infinite dimensions. And in the same way that yin and yang operate, right? We need to have the both in everything. So, modernity itself, this period of time that most of us know as like modern life, and that's really with like the Industrial Revolution onwards until now. Okay. The Industrial Revolution completely eradicated an old way of being, an ancient life, and shifted it into a like highly accelerated, technologically driven, mechanical way of living and viewing life. But this is a blip in the radar, right? Like that is a span of not even 150 years, maybe 100. I'm not great at timing, but 150 years is like a blink of an eye in the span of time that humans have been around. And how we have lived up until that time has been drastically different. So modernity as we know it is the deviation, okay? It is the outlier. And yet so much of our world is looks at that and is like, well, that of course is how we need to be. Of course we need to extract from nature. Of course we need to enslave people to do these things, right? Like there's so much here that is the deviation from the norm, but has become the norm. So up until that point, our ancestors, for the most part, lived alongside and in partnership with the natural world for most of human evolution. Okay, that's animism. So we honored nature and rightfully so. We were in concert with nature. We had to be. So, but now most of us live in concrete cities, right? I know people who don't really get outside like at all during the day. Think about what that does to your body and your being. Think about how divorced most of us live from the living, breathing, natural world. It's true, it like is devastating when you think about the impact of that. We don't breathe clean air. We drink water that has lost its natural structure, that has microplastics, right? That is fluoride added to it. We don't get consent to that. We don't exist in the same natural ways, right? We have kind of modified reality artificially. So, and that's just the accepted way of being. And because of that, because we have privileged these technological industrial advances over the well-being and interdependent structures that we've always lived inside. Now we've privileged a very different reality. We have disrupted that natural equilibrium. We have actually left it. We have stepped outside of that relationship. And when you disrupt equilibrium, you set in motion a series of extreme consequences and reactions that are meant to actually rectify order. So the way I was shown this was like, if you think about like kind of pulling like a ball on a string and right, it's going to start swinging really widely until finally it slows down and it finds that balance point. But if you pull something so far out of relation, it's going to naturally swing really far in the opposite direction. And it's going to continue, right, until it finally comes again to equilibrium. Now, again, chaos is part of this. Chaos is a natural part of this like patterning of harmony. But we can't ignore the fact that we have, like manipulated it so far outside of that, that now this, right, cosmic arm is kind of swinging. And we see that. in a lot of the extremes that are happening on our planet right now. Extremes of climate and heat and weather patterns, extremes of violence, right? Extremes of ideologies. We see a lot of extremes. We live in a time of extremes because we have designed it as such. That's one thing from systems design that I always love. And it's such an important thing to remember, which is that no system is broken. They are all designed to function exactly as they are functioning. So, what we have done is step outside of a natural equilibrium, and we have created a disorder that is so like to an extreme that now things need to rebalance themselves, and they are going to swing pretty hard in a lot of different directions in order to do so. And the reality is there's only so long that the earth could tolerate that level of disharmony before those patterns kicked in. The window is only so big, and we have exceeded it. We know this, we are living through it. But I just want to point out that that window is the triggering event. And even though there was signs long before that, we weren't yet in the like, holding the pan over the heat. But now we are. So let me come back to this whole like window of genetic memory again, which is that we all incarnated on Earth with gifts that are designed to support this global rebalancing act. Period. Okay? If you are here, your skill is something that is going to address an imbalance, right? On a very small level or a very large level. Now, when things started to really shift and wake up in 2019, so did we. I know so many people in that time who have gone through massive awakenings, upsets, rock bottoms, rebirths, career changes, relocations, right? Breakups. We have all been sort of seismically being like shaken out of stupor. Now, we are all weavers of this reality, okay? Everyone here is a weaver. Now, I want you to imagine that the like fabric of reality is kind of like a big, beautiful rug, right? And we're all busy like weaving our little piece of it. And then it's like, oh, someone kind of took a long view and was like, oh, there's all of these holes in the fabric. Ooh, oopsie. Now, what they were telling me is like your skills, the particular incarnated gifts that you came with, that your lineage prepared you with, are the graft for a U-sized hole in this fabric. Okay? And we know what a skin graft is, right? It's like when you take skin from another part of your body to help with a wound and to give it like I can't think of the word right now, but something to build on, to graft onto, right? So your skills are that graft. Your skills are a special thread for a very particular hole in this fabric. Now, in the same way that each plant and each animal has its perfect niche in their environment, the role that only it can fill, or else things get wildly out of balance. I love the research that talks about how when they actually started like letting wolves repopulate in Yellowstone, it completely rebalanced the whole ecosystem. The deer came back and then the rabbits came back, right? It was like everything benefited from those wolves actually fulfilling their ecological role in that environment without being hunted or over harvested by humans. So you can see that everything in nature responds to a void, and it responds in ways that are not always beneficial because it's trying to address a deficit. Okay, so you also fill a niche. There is an ecosystem here on this planet that needs you, whether or not you know where it is. And I've been encountering a lot of that in my divination work, is people who are like, it ain't here. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, but I need to be somewhere else, right? There's like a tugging, like, ooh, where do I be? Where do I go? Right? And maybe it's not even to that point of awareness yet. Maybe it's just feeling like I'm not fulfilled. I'm not doing what I need to be doing. So, a lot of us are getting moved around and replanted to better serve this niche, to address and adapt these widely disharmonious ecosystems. That happened to me. I never expected to be in like Washington, D.C. area. That was not on my like map. I laugh now because when I think about what I'm doing here and what is needed here, it makes perfect sense. But I resisted it because I was like, ew, that place, no. But we are often called to go to the places that need our medicine. And it might not be completely obvious at first, especially if you're still discovering what your medicine is. So, this ritual, the one I'm about to offer right now, is to help harmonize the field between you and the place that needs you the most. So you can be in the right niche. So you can start taking steps towards that place that needs you, because without you, it will suffer. Now, okay, so here's the ritual, and it's an involved one. You're going to go to a place in nature where you have space to be alone. Okay? This is a place where you can pray, where you can cry, where you can talk out loud without being worried that like someone on a hike is gonna see you. If you have a backyard, great. If you don't, you will find a place. Now, you're gonna bring the following things with you: a feather, a stone, a shell, and a piece of incense, all that you have collected. And you're gonna bring some white chalk. Now, what you're gonna do is you're gonna draw a circle on the ground with that piece of white chalk, big enough that you can sit inside of it. And you are basically going to mark, like bring a compass of some kind, because you need to mark the four directions as they are, right? So you need to identify where north is and mark that on your circle or like on the edge. Now, here's where the things will go. Feather goes in the north. Incense goes in the south. Stone in the west. And shell in the east. These all represent elemental energies. Feather is air, incense is fire, stone is mineral, shell is water, and there's earth, which is in the center, which is where you are. And there's another piece to activate that. Now, I invite you to think about, if you are someone who is wondering where your place is, where you need to be, you're not in the right place, right? If you're entertaining anything in the realm of these questions, this is really for you. So think about what your perfect ecosystem or environment would give to you. And this is both in terms of physicality, right? Like I need to live in the woods. So that's huge. I would name that. If you need to be close to, I don't know, like a co-op, if you like need a community where there's a lot of parents around, these are all key pieces of that niche. If you need to have access to certain kinds of resources, if you're like, I need a 12-step meeting every week in person, these are all things that you should be identifying before you start this ritual. Because here's what you're going to do once you have all of those identified and this ritual set up. You're going to start at the north, and you're going to speak out loud one thing that you need in your ecosystem. So it's like these are kind of like anchors. So like you'd look at feather in the north and you would say, okay, I need to live within 5 miles of a really good school. And then you would rotate clockwise to the next, which would be shell in the east. And you would say, I need a community of people who are, practicing Buddhists. And then you would go to incense in the south. You're going to light that incense too, by the way. And you would say another thing. I need to be near running water, right? Or I need to be near the ocean because I have to go surfing. So you're going to speak piece by piece by piece all the different dimensions of your perfect ecosystem. And you can keep going around that compass as many times as you need to. until you feel complete speaking what you want in your perfect niche. And again, I invite you to think about landscape. I invite you to think about the kinds of community and people that you need around you. I invite you to think about the kinds of like work you do, how you want to hold it, what resources you need, how available you need them to be, and anything else that would help you hold your life. So think about what you need to be valued, resourced, and supported with. So again, you're going to go around that circle and continue this process several times. And really like turn your body and acknowledge each one of these directions as you do so. You're going to be inside the circle. Now, when you are done, you are going to dig a little hole in the center with your finger. It's going to be in the earth, so make sure there's like, you're sitting on like grass or something. You're going to dig that hole and you're going to spit in it. And you're going to tell the earth that you offer yourself to this perfect ecosystem. I offer myself up to the niche, the place in this world where I'm supposed to be now. Okay? And ask it to direct you to where your most harmonious ecosystem is. You may say other, beautiful things as they come forth from your heart, but that is the essence of the prayer that you need to say out loud into the earth. And then you can bury your spit. Now, here's the thing. You're going to need to listen for the messages that are directing you. And they might be subtle, they might be big. All right? Mine was like a total rock bottom because I was like, I'm not going to leave California. But life was like, no, you need to be here now. So there might be big forces at work. Let them sweep your old life away. Let them guide you to this new place. And really notice what pings and lights up your soul. Like, never would have thought about this place, but okay. If you're going to a place that you're like, I don't know about, but the messages seem strong, go check it out. Go see what happens. I will say that when I got here, and again, I didn't intend to stay. I didn't want to be here. My whole life fell apart. I was feeling real bad about my, everything. But all of a sudden, it's like I started making all these friends. I started meeting all these random communities. I got plugged into things immediately. People were willing to help. Everything I'd been praying for the past like 5 years landed in my life without me even trying. Okay? It was wild. So when you are in the right place, life starts working for you because you are like in the ecosystem. You're doing your role and that role is needed. So trust it. Now, here's a second step to that ritual. You're going to do that, you're going to listen, and you're going to act on what you are given in terms of messages. Now, when you receive clarity around the best place for you, this part is important. You must bring a quarter to the mountain. And what I mean to the mountain, some people are like, I don't have mountains. Great, go to a really tall hill. A hill is also a mountain in this case. So you're going to bring that quarter to a hill or a nice big mountain, or to a mountain or a nice big hill. And you're going to speak a prayer out loud into this quarter, which the essence of this is, thank you for directing me to my place. I humbly ask the mountain to open the way for this next chapter. And then you are going to plant that quarter at the foot of the mountain, and you're going to offer clear spirits to it. Clear spirits is liquor, right? So like a little party bottle like this big, white rum, vodka, gin, it must be clear. You're going to pour that over the little place where you bury this quarter. Because spirits, they are the jet fuel for our prayers, and they will light up that prayer, and the mountain will open the way for you. So be ready. Okay, y'all. So that covers the first message that came through. And now let's move to the next one. So the piece that spoke for this message is called The Third Path. And it's really a piece about neutralizing polarities. And what it had to say I found to be really beautiful. Now, there's a lot of us that are thinking about what do I do? What do I do about all of this immense suffering in the world right now? And I know a lot of us feel racked with grief or numb and don't know how to move. So you're not alone in that. Many of us are struggling to really reckon and reconcile with how do we take action against tragedies that feel so enormous and feel like they're just rolling of their own accord. Um, yes, I am talking about Gaza, but I'm also talking about a lot of other stuff too, right? Ecological catastrophe, people who have been oppressed, disenfranchised, right? Like the fact that we're still killing brown people and black people under the guise of policing. Like there's so much injustice, there's so much suffering. So it really can be whatever you feel impacted by. Now, I want to say that the whole point of this message and ritual is that there is no team, there is no side. And I know that's a really difficult truth to speak right now. And the reality is like you can still have feelings and beliefs about what is right and what is a good action to take. But any kind of othering, any kind of division, any kind of us versus them enhances the division, which is a symptom of the original wounding. Okay? I hate to be so simplistic in this definition, but it is what it is. And anything that enhances division or divides reinforces suffering. It reinforces the wounding and it reinforces the warfare that is happening to try and fix it. So, as we've already talked about, anything that engenders and enables extremes in thinking or action is by nature out of balance. And will, like anything that is out of balance in us, will not enable a healing action to come forward. And a healing action, right, is one that would actually address the root of suffering, not just the symptom. So that's what we're talking about today is like, how do we actually start addressing the root of suffering? And the micros and the macro, right? So I know a lot of us feel immobilized by, our voices aren't heard, nothing is happening, right? Like, what is it going to take to really see change? And again, I hate to be so simplistic, but the only change we can ever actually make is within ourselves. Suffering asks us to hold the both and in our hearts and reality. It is one of the most enlightened actions we can take on this planet as a human because it is so fundamentally opposite from how humans historically have handled difference and war and violence. Compassion is a suture. Again, they're talking a lot about like surgery, but that's what we're doing. This is energetic surgery. Compassion is a suture that mends the wound of division. We can hold people responsible for their actions. We can bring people, we can enact justice while still holding the truth of their humanity, regardless of whatever side we think they're on or we think we're on. Okay? The truth is we are on the side of humanity, and to cast this division is to work against everyone's aims, regardless of where you fall on this like landscape, in this game, on this playing field. So we must be able to reckon with evil without creating more enemies. And that feels like a task almost too big for all of us. But I do know that we would not have this task if we weren't up to it. And we are definitely needing to address it. And I want to say that healing is wholeness. True healing actions come from wholeness. They do not walk towards wholeness, they emerge from it. So where we are divided in ourselves, we are acting divided against the world. Where we are whole in ourselves, we will approach the world from that wholeness and we will hold it with that wholeness. Healing includes all of us. No one is left behind. And that feels like a dangerous thing to say in this moment. But truly, if we can't find ways to create justice and responsibility and healing actions that don't include reparative actions for everyone involved, then we have not done the healing required and asked of us. So, true healing requires that we face whatever lives within us that is set on isolating, othering, exterminating, punishing, and suppressing that which is painful to acknowledge. All suffering, the function of suffering, is to reveal the darkness under the surface. Okay? Our job is to confront that darkness, to love that darkness, to look inside of that darkness without reenacting the same patterns that led to the creation of that darkness, which feels like an impossible task. But we must learn to love what is intolerable, what is impossible, what is so ugly that we can barely stand to look at it. We must love it. Our job, or otherwise we will continue to enact war against ourselves and each other. War is a vibration. War always begins within. So I love this. What this ritual, what they gave us for this ritual, and what they said is that it is time to plant a garden that honors all the ugly seeds that live in you. Now you can do this with container pots if you don't have like an outdoor space, like get like a little mini herb garden, right? Or you can do it in your actual garden, or you can go plant wildflowers somewhere, on a median in the middle of a superhighway, right? Like go bless the world with your flowers. Now, you're gonna need to get some seeds that you wish to grow. I'd get a couple packets, why not? We all have a lot to look at. Now, here's the thing. For each seed that you plant, you must identify something in you that you struggle to love. Maybe it's your judgment. Maybe it's your addictions. Maybe it's your laziness, right? Maybe it's your vanity. There's going to be a lot of seeds, so get ready to look at it. So with each seed that you plant, you're going to take that seed and you're going to bless that thing that you struggle to love. You are going to ask the earth to help you transform your relation to it. And put that seed in your mouth to cover it in spit. That's your covenant. You can also, if the seed's really tiny, I know some of them are, you dig little holes, spit in those holes, and then put the seed in. But with each seed, I want you to acknowledge what feels so impossible to love within you and to bless it. Thank you for allowing me to sit with my judgment today. Thank you for the part of me that always wants to look away from the immense suffering of this world. Thank you for the part of me that is numb to other people's pain. Look at it, love it, and plant that seed. And as you water it, reflect on your relationship to these things and watch as it shifts. How does watering and tending these places in you bring more life to the surface? Because that is true transmutation. That is true transformation. And that is ultimately the kind of transformation that we all need to also focus on. If we are not tending those places in ourselves, how will we ever be able to help anyone else? Be patient. Be graceful. Practice radical compassion for yourself. Because where else do you get to practice that if not on the places and people you struggle to love? And practice this tending in other ways too. Hold space for the people and parts that challenge you. Can you invite yourself to find ways to confront the things that feel so like, ugh, I don't want to go there. I don't want to see that. I don't want to be with that. Try. because it is this that will stretch your edges and open your heart to such an enormous depth and capacity, it will astonish you. When you come up against something in the outside world, or in your external reality, that pushes up against you, ask yourself, where does this also live in me? And be ruthless in your investigation and identification. You will be amazed at what you discover. And this is not an opportunity to punish yourself because you found like, oh, there's my racist like belief. Ooh, no. Ask yourself then, the next question is, and how can I love this more? How can I offer this part of me healing? How can I offer it grace? All right, y'all. That's a big one. That's a really big one. Whew. Let's take a deep breath together. Okay. Now, the next and last piece that I want to speak to is a piece called Death Mother. And it's one of my favorite pieces in my kit. Now, the message came through loud and clear. It said the old world is dying and it's time to let it go. We are being asked to live differently now. You've already felt it, I'm sure, right? It is also time to investigate where you are still living in the past, right? Energetically, emotionally, or where you are attached to a way of life that is fundamentally unsustainable. Look at your technology addictions. Look at your fast fashion. Look at how much you waste food. Look at, nostalgia that doesn't allow you to confront the choices that you need to make now. We no longer live in that world. And to really galvanize the change that we need to enact now, again, starts within us. Now, the beautiful thing is that death and birth happen side by side. They are not separate as much as they seem like they exist on complete different ends of the spectrum. But all spectrums are actually circles. They are all connected. And so it feels like extremes when we break that circle and look at it like a line is that they look like extremes. They look like opposites. But really, they're side by side. They overlap. For instance, when a mother gives birth to a baby, she dies to her old self, her old life. She becomes a deeper, newer, bigger self. It is a personal apocalypse, and it is gorgeous and beautiful and necessary for her to become a mother. In the same way, when someone dies, they are born into a new dimension as an ancestor, as a new form of matter, right? The energy shapeshifts, but it still exists. So in the same way, two things are occurring at the same time. And again, while they seem like opposites, both are true. Something is dying and something is being born. And where would you prefer to invest your energy? Ironically, the new ways are the old ways. It is the old ways to live close to the ancestors, to live close to the earth, to live deeply in community, to live simply, to live resourcefully, to not waste things. Can you imagine your ancient ancestors looking at the way you live now? What would they say? What would they think? We have immense privilege. We live in a reality that most of our ancestors could have never even imagined. And we do so with so little care, so little thought as to what will happen to all of these things. What will happen to this water bottle that I've purchased? What will happen to the clothes that I donate? They all go somewhere. Now, the best way to say this is that you will need to detach from thought forms that are isolating and hyper independent. We all have beliefs, right? Ways of existing, ways of thinking about existence. And I encourage you to examine as you go about your life how you live. Just like kind of start questioning things that you normally take for granted. Is this the best way I could do this? Does it make sense for me to do this? Is it good for the earth for me to do this? Is it good for, think of the next 7 generations? Would it be good for them? So it is time for us to divest from the idea that we are supreme and that all of our needs deserve to be met in the most convenient, accessible way possible, regardless of the price. Because there's always a price. And we are currently experiencing the inflation of prices everywhere, which let's take that as a sign. Because right now, the price has become too high for many of us to live comfortably. And if that's not a complete metaphor for the cost of our lifestyle, then I don't know what is. So it is time to act like an agent of the earth. That is what a human is. We are not a disease. We are not an infestation. We are not some alien beings that just got, landed here. We are an agent of the earth, and your ancestors knew that. And it's time for you to remember that. It is what you have always been and will always be first. So if you want to live that, this ritual is for you. And what they said is that this ritual is a baptism back into your true nature. So first you are invited to cleanse yourself. Shower, bath, immersion in a body of water. Just bathe. And as you bathe, ask the healing waters for your conditioning to be removed. Anything that prevents you from being in relationship with the earth, ask it to reveal itself and be taken away. Then you're supposed to go lay your naked body on the earth. So if you have a backyard, this is going to be really helpful. If you can find a beautiful kind of sacred space in wild wilderness somewhere, I highly recommend doing that next to a river. But this is part of it, right? Reclaiming our naturalness, reclaiming the part of us that feels like, oh, I can't do that. That's weird. Ugh. So go lay your naked body on the earth and speak to the earth. Let the earth know that you are offering yourself back now. So there's a lot of offering ourselves back in this transmission, which I love. Let the earth know that you want to serve her. Let the earth know that you desire to be guided. Let the earth know that you want to be reclaimed and rewilded. Let the earth know that you need help remembering how to live in right relationship. And then again, act in accordance with the messages and information that you receive. Allow yourself to remember and see what comes through for you. Okay, so that completes my transmission for June. I hope that everyone found some decadent, tasty little morsels to take away. And we're going to transition to the Q&A. So I will stop the recording. I just want to thank everyone here and everyone watching. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening. Thank you for receiving this. It is such a privilege to be offering these rituals and these messages. So I hope they serve you.